Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. All right. So here I am with Jay Manning, who has become one of my Clubhouse favorites, as well as a dear friend of mine. So Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you right away to introduce yourself.
Fantastic, Karen. Thanks for having me. And any excuse to lose some time in conversation with you is time well spent for me. So I'm very happy to be here. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jay Manning, a 25-year veteran business builder, business strategist, business mentor, business coach. I hold 3 business degrees. And if you couldn't tell from all of that, I'm an all-round bona fide business building nerd, really. I speak and read and write 3 languages fluently: English, Afrikaans, and business. It's true, I find systems, spreadsheets, and simplification super sexy, and clearly a little alliteration in all of that too. I hail from sunny South Africa, and in fact, I hail from the same small hometown as Charlize Theron, Benoni. And just like Charlize, I escaped from Benoni as fast as I could after finishing high school, and have today to travel to over 23 countries, and I've even stopped to live in a couple of them along the way. So although I've enjoyed performing in local Amdram musicals and theatre productions since the age of 9, it turns out I have way more business talent than I ever did acting ability, which I personally think is really lucky for Charlize Theron. Anyway, actually it's been really lucky for me too, as I've managed to build 3 multiple 7-figure businesses along the way, 2 of which I've sold, and the other is my design and event agency, which I still love and run today. And there are 3 things that I believe to be true. Firstly, I believe it's important to treat everyone with kindness and dignity, because when it comes right down to it, we're all pink on the inside. I believe champagne is best drunk, and I believe entrepreneurs are the world's answers to unemployment and economic crisis, which is the very reason I started mentoring innovative startup entrepreneurs 14 years ago now, and why I now help coaches to build businesses that work for them and not the other way around.
Wow.
There you have it.
Oh, Jay, wow, that is so thorough. I love it. I didn't know that about Charlize. How do you say her name?
Charlize Theron.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, you got it. But I just saw a movie with her in it. I went, oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, my podcast is all about confidence. So I want to jump in because you ooze confidence, in my opinion, from the moment that I met you. And I'm curious where that comes from.
Oh, how true do you want me to be at this point?
I want you to be as true as possible. You are the no BS person. So I want to hear, direct whatever you
Honestly, a lot of it was a very carefully crafted facade. It was something that I did out of a need to hide in plain sight. And, and even my, I'm extremely competitive, and virtually everything I set out to do, I do really well. And most of that drive has been to, put the focus on the achievements and to take eyes off my personal life. So I'm gay. And this is something I knew when I was very, very young. But like I said, came from a very small town, Benoni. It's a very conservative, religious town. And the only exposure I had to other gay people at the time was, watching what I can only call exorcisms taking place, to cast gay demons out of them, or, excommunication from their church and from their families and from the community. So in my mind, I was left with very little doubt that should anyone find out that I was one of them, there would be very dire consequences.
Wow.
And so the confidence was actually me putting on a persona that showed somebody different. So that's really where it was about. And at some point in my life, at some point I came out, and I live as an openly gay woman. I'm married to an amazing woman, I've headed up gay pride in Cape Town. I ran one of the first gay lesbian bars I owned one of the first gay lesbian bars in Cape Town too. And so, it's been a long time since that part of me, but that line blurred, I guess you could say. And so that part of me stayed, as well as the part that didn't always necessarily feel the confidence that was being exuded.
Can you say a little more about that? That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's so I think I mentioned I have 3 business degrees. I've built all these businesses. I've done all these things. I've got all these accolades. And yet I have never, ever truly felt credible or expert or, just the other day on Clubhouse, I ran a room. I host a room that has been running for 6 months now, going into 7 months. And I wanted to check in with the regulars in the room to make sure that they were getting out of the room what they needed for it to be a valuable spend of their time. And I started talking to them about bringing in other experts and bringing in all this other stuff. And so many of them responded. They emailed, they DM'd saying, we just love the way you teach. And hearing that from somebody is always a surprise to me, because I genuinely never feel like I deliver enough, or that I know enough, or that so it's still in me, that feeling of not quite belonging, not quite fitting, not quite measuring up. With being gay, I knew that I was failing my parents. And so that feeling of not measuring up, I think, is deeply entrenched at a cellular level. Because it's not irrational. At a rational level, I can rationalize it away, but it's more cellular than that.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for your honesty. This is another thing I love about you, is that you just cut right to the chase and you're not afraid to be honest. And I love your model of courage. That's what really sticks out to me about you. And obviously, incredible accomplishment, but on a personal level, you care so deeply and you're serving so many people. I feel the same way about, like, as the rest of the folks on Clubhouse, of wanting more of Jay. Like, anytime I can be in a room with you, I want to be in a room with you. And I'm curious to know, what advice would you give to somebody who's feeling like they can't be their true self on the outside as well as how they are on the inside?
Honesty, do the best that you can. Be compassionate with yourself. Create space for yourself and advocate for yourself. That was one of the things that I wish that I had learned really early on, that I had the right to take up space. That I was entitled to love, that I was entitled to be acknowledged, I guess, in my entirety. Flaws, warts, unconventional, whatever's, all that stuff. I deserved to have a space where I felt okay about being me. And so I wish that I had learned to advocate. And if there's anything I would advise anyone, is find the voice that you so readily use for others and give some of it to yourself.
Love that. How are you doing in that area?
Yeah, I think, so I'm very much an activist, and I have been my entire life. Human rights. I was an anti-Apartheid activist. I got arrested for the first time when I was 17.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so at a rally, an anti-Apartheid rally, and I have been an activist for. We had an incident in our country about 20 years ago now with the Thule elephants. It was an animal trader, and I organized national rallies around the country. Like 60,000 people showed up, like around the country, all on the same day, same time. It was quite phenomenal.
Oh my God.
I have, rallied for the gay community in South Africa, very actively and politically rallied against that. And it is so easy to throw your weight behind someone else. it's always been interesting to me how outraged I can become on behalf of somebody else.
Mm.
And then how apologetic on behalf of myself. Like, I'm so sorry that I have, taken a step. I'm so sorry that I've disappointed you. I'm so sorry that I've stepped on your toes. I'm so sorry that I'm not what you expected. And that has been an ongoing journey. I don't know if it, despite how much, whatever the work is that you do and how you intend to be different, like I said, at that cellular level, it's a constant daily work in progress. It's a constant reminder. Sometimes it's looking in the mirror when you're feeling a lot smaller than what you're projecting and going, it's okay, I've got you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to come back to that line that you said was really powerful about you have the right to take up space. I mean, I hope that any woman listening to this, if you hear nothing else, you have the right to take up space. That's really powerful. And what I find fascinating about this, Jay, and I relate to this as well, but I mean, you've got all of these literal accomplishments, accolades, starting businesses. And I think what fascinates me about it is that you can have all of that and yet still have some of these insecurities inside. And yeah, go ahead.
I think the difference is those are things I've done. And the insecurities are in terms of who I am. The doing versus the being. I find it very easy to do the things. I find it incredibly easy to do, achieve, to conquer, to stack up those things. It's the being, it's allowing to be that has been, not always. It's been a bit of a mountain to climb sometimes. Sometimes it's been that person Mount Everest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you're making me think too. I love that distinction. And I can remember a number of years back when Chris said to me, my husband, for those of you that don't know, but Chris said to me way before we got married, because I kept kind of trying to show him, oh, I'm doing this and this. It was the doing. And he said, honey, I think it's important that I tell you, I actually love you for who you are, not for what you do. Do you realize that? And again, because I grew up with that performance mindset that your value is tied to your accomplishment. And I'm guessing a lot of people listening can relate to this as well. It was really profound for me to hear somebody actually say that, not just somebody, but somebody that truly loved me. And it was hard to accept that. It was hard to actually realize and internalize it and take that in. It's taken me many years to get to that point. And then there's still default messaging. Like you said, it's a cellular level of where, oh, if I just do more, then I'll get this, or I'll get that, or I'll have that. And I love the fact that we can just talk about this honestly and acknowledge that this is something that many of us have experienced in our upbringing. And simply starting with that awareness is so huge. And then, of course, it's, well, what are we going to do about it then? And you mentioned a little bit about, or you touched on this with saying to yourself in the mirror, it's okay, or I can't remember the exact words that you used, but when you said the mirror, it made me think about another thing that I like to do occasionally is to have a Post-it saying some affirmation about myself. And I used to think affirmations were like, well, or that sounds nice, honestly. But it's interesting when you look at the research around affirmations and the way that we think we actually start becoming. And I find that absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to go with whatever I can to help me continue to build that confidence as well. Any thoughts on that?
As you were talking, it reminded me of something that one of my mentors and coaches a number of years ago got me to do, which was to write on a sticky note and stick in my mirror, I forgive you for, and the exercise was for every morning to come up with 10 things I forgave myself for. So it could be as simple as, I forgive myself for not going for that run yesterday morning, right? Or I forgive myself for eating the chocolate cake in the middle of the night. Yes. It could be as superfluous or always as surface level as that. But you run out of things quite soon. And then, slowly you end up going deeper and having to dig deeper, I guess. And that is hard. forgiving yourself for not backing yourself, forgiving yourself for not using, your voice, for not advocating for yourself is sometimes really hard. In fact, it's painful. And I think it's Dr. Wayne Dyer who wrote the book, breaking up with the habit. What is it called? Breaking up with the habit of being yourself. And it's actually a book about quantum physics, which it's a phenomenal book.
Oh, wow.
And I completely watched the title, I'm sure. But at a non-quantum physics level, you build the habit. You build the habit over time of being the way that you are, of being who you are. And undoing that, unraveling that is, firstly, it's hard, it's painful, it takes time, and I don't think the work is ever done.
I agree. And I'm laughing only because almost more in, oh my gosh, I think we'd all just love to be able to put a bow on this stuff and move on with our lives. But I do believe the same thing. Yeah.
Breaking up with the habit of being yourself. I think that's the title. I completely watched it anyway.
Oh, great. That's breaking up with the habit of being yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a profound title. I'm sitting here thinking, like, I'm processing that as I'm thinking about it or as I hear it. Oh my gosh. Well, let's shift for a minute and talk about one of the biggest mistakes that you made and how you recovered from it, if you'd be willing to share that.
So you said we only have 25, 30 minutes, right? Oh my God, the mistakes. Karen, I've made so many mistakes. Man. I've made business mistakes. I've made personal mistakes.
How about one, if you can think of it, related to confidence, or maybe a time when you didn't speak up, but you wish that you had?
Yeah, so I mentioned in my, when I introduced myself that I've been in the performing arts since very, very young. And in my final year of high school, I auditioned with a organization called PACT, P-A-C-T. So it was our national acting society, basically. And I was accepted to tour with them for 2 years, all expenses paid, full scholarship. And I was unbelievably excited. Oh my God, like Charlize Theron, watch this space. And I went home to tell my father about it, crazy excited. My father's a banker. And my father listened and he was quiet. And I said, Dad, did you hear? And he was quiet. And then he proceeded to basically hit the ceiling, hit the floor, and bounce off the walls for effect. And very, nonchalantly told me I had 3 choices. I was going to study finance, or if I was feeling particularly creative, I was going to be studying finance. I was 15 before I realized God and my father were not the same person. My father was infinitely more powerful. And so guess what I ended up studying? I followed finance and I went into business. And it was one of those moments that I spent a lot of years studying things that I didn't care for. Finance, although I love business, I didn't really enjoy finance, the world of finance. My father was a banker. And those are one of the moments where I wish that I'd actually said no. I had made a different choice for myself. Look, everything works out in the wash, right? Life works out the way it's meant to. But it's one of those moments that have really stuck out for me in terms of he made choices, or he was making a choice for me based on his terms of reference, his experience, his expectation. And it did not take me into account at all, outside of his fears around unemployment, if you were a performer, if you were a creative. So, it came from a good place, but really it didn't give me wings. It didn't allow me to make mistakes. It just didn't. And so that was one of the times where I really wish I had spoken up and not just said, yes, Dad. It was one of those moments. And, the way I think I compensated for it later in life was I continued to be part of the performing arts, and I continued to be in stage production my entire adult life. I haven't for the last 5 years, but I've continued to feed that part of me, just in a different way. But that was one of those moments that has stuck with me my entire life. You know, it's like more than half my life ago. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I imagine all of us have some example like that where we wish, oh, if I had just said something differently. I have a very moment that I relate to that when I remember being in college and being so excited about my theater stuff that I was doing. And the first thing my dad says was, well, that's not going to put money on the table. I mean,
exactly that.
So,
exactly that.
It's amazing how, and it's so interesting too, that you just think, I mean, again, let's hope they did their best, our parents, but these things that we can learn from to go, imagine, I'm just thinking, even for me as a kid, couldn't you have just indulged me and said, oh, that's great, honey. Maybe I would have changed my mind anyway. It's not like, for me, I wasn't necessarily going into that for a living. But I do think that, to me, the lesson for ourselves, if we think about the fact is the only person that we can actually control is ourselves, is to think, how can we speak life into other people? And how can we encourage them on their journey so that they do feel safe, seen, accepted, and heard? And certainly that's really important to me. And I know you're so good at that with the people that are in your circle as well.
You know, I think a lot of that, you know, if I compare that parenting style to my parenting style with my son, I think one of the massive fundamental shifts for me is my father came from an era where the word pivot had something to do with car mechanics, right? It had nothing to do with your career. Because back, you know, 20 plus years ago, almost 30 years ago, I guess, back then you needed to choose your course of study and your career at that point, the career that you were going to have for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Hard and fast. You couldn't afford to make mistakes then, because this was going to have to fit you for the next 60, 70 years. And I think we know now that, honestly, you can be anything you want at any time in your life, and it can be different things at different times of your life, and it gets to be your adventure.
Yeah.
You know, it's choose your adventure. The book is actually choose your own adventure, not till death us do pass. Right?
Yeah. Well, your dad was a banker. My dad was a railroad engineer, and that's what he did for whatever, 30 plus years. You're absolutely, I mean, you're absolutely right. That is the exact, I mean, for eras back then, it's just, you make a choice and you just stick with it. And I love the freedom of the difference that we can create now, for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Well, I had something else I wanted to ask you, and of course it's spaced out in my mind, but I'm curious to know if you have anything specific that you would like to share with the women listening around confidence.
Yeah, confidence is not something that somebody else can give you. I remember, I know all the things that I have tried. I've tried the latest shade of MAC lipstick. I have tried, you know, the eyelash extensions. I have tried somebody else's affirmations. I have tried to emulate somebody else's way of being, how they show up in the world, the things that they do, the things that they eat, their exercise regime. And confidence is not an outside-in job. It's just not. It's personal. It's a personal journey that you have to be willing to go on. It's a relationship that you have to be willing to foster with yourself, irrespective of what the world might be saying. And often the world's not even saying what we think they're saying. But whatever we think is going on outside in the world, or how we think people are perceiving us, or how we think we measure up or compare to other people, or how far behind or far ahead we think we are in relation to all those things. It is a personal relationship. It happens in the quiet of your mind. It's happening when you walk onto a stage, I imagine, and you smile out and you start your opening words of a well-rehearsed speech. There's something going in, you know, on inside about that confidence. It happens when you show up online for your business, certainly with, you know, with business. And you need to treat that part of yourself with love and grace and patience and kindness, but you also need to be your own cheerleader. You've got to be your own coach. Because you've got this, you really do. I promise you, you've got it.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it is really true. It's a personal journey. And I know that there's varying opinions about the fake it till you make it. But I think the concept is important to acknowledge that there were a lot of times I certainly didn't feel confident, but I stepped into it anyway. It's that whole feel the fear and do it anyway. And then what I find fascinating is that when you start taking that leap of faith and jumping into that thing that maybe at first makes you feel uncomfortable, that eventually you start feeling more comfortable. And the other thing, go ahead.
Like I said, the misinformation around confidence, or the misexpectation around confidence, is that when I feel confident, I'll do the thing.
Right.
When in fact, it's doing the thing that builds the confidence. Yes, I talk to my coaching clients around, we talk about the confidence bank, right? And every time you do something, so something that you're lacking confidence in, so let's say it's going live on Instagram or pitching to podcasts or whatever it is that you do, every time you do that thing, you get to put a confidence coin in the confidence bank. And at some other point in that area of your life, that thing, you'll be able to withdraw the dividends because you will have the confidence, because you will have consistently put a coin in the bank. But you can't take the confidence when there's nothing there. You simply can't. You have to build that up. You've got to invest in it.
Yes, I love that. You've got to invest in it. That's so true. Well, Jay, why don't we wrap up? I could talk to you forever, but we need to keep to time here, even though I'd like to keep talking and asking you more questions. But where can people... What, Jay?
You adulting and keeping track of time. Well done.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Every once in a while I pull that out. So where can we reach you?
Well, I am at Vivid with Jay in all the places. www.vividwithjay.com, at Vivid with Jay in Clubhouse, on Instagram, in all the places. That's where you'll find me.
Excellent. Now I have to ask you this because I'm personally curious. Why Vivid with Jay? Tell us about the name.
Okay, so it actually started out as Vivid Velocity with Jay. And oh my God, what a mouthful that was. But it came with, when I was certifying as a coach, they told us one of the exercises was to come up with an icon that represented us as a coach. And of course, there were the usual flurry of dolphins and dragonflies and butterflies and, I don't know, mountain peaks and all that kind of thing. And I came up with 2 triangles overlapping. Oh, okay. And for me, it started to represent the, so a triangle in the digital sense in the online space is a play button, right? Like on your VCR, the triangle's a play. A double triangle is a fast forward. Now that's very much who I am. I am ambitious and I'm impatient. I love to play, but I like things to happen on fast forward. And so that was where it came, and so I had these 2 triangles, like, well, that looks like V. And that's where it kind of branched out from there, and it became, vivid. I have a very vivid imagination, and I will do anything when I'm super clear on it, right? When I'm clear on the mission, when I'm clear on the goal, I can achieve anything. So that vivid is important, and the velocity being the speed. I don't like, I hate wasting time on unnecessary things. I hate being stuck in the mud and the weeds. I just want to move. I want to get there, and I want to go, and I want to keep going. There's, if you're lucky, you've got 70 good years in this life. Like, I want to make them count. I want to do the thing, And so that was very much where it started, Vivid Velocity with Jay. Anyway, too much of a mouthful. It became Vivid with Jay.
I love it. I'm so glad to know that. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, Jay, and looking forward to future conversations.
Thanks, Karen. Lovely to be here.
And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.